My name is Raymond Folling. My company is a registered investment advisory. I've been in the financial services industry for 36 years with a focus really of retirement planning and a focus on guaranteed retirement income. Probably one of the biggest problems that we have with the people that are already retired, but will become a problem for people that are approaching retirement, is how do we make this money last a lifetime? And there's several ways that they can do that. As I mentioned before, it's the days of being able to just to leave your money sitting in CDs in the bank is over. You know, it'll be a long period of time, in my view, before we ever see interest rates for the consumer get to 5% or higher. So that has forced a lot of people into the stock market, and to where now they're trying to rely on the stock market to make that money last. That's a problem also, with the volatility that we've had in the marketplace, with all the money that has been put into the market by the Fed, has made it a place where people are just throwing money now at the market, even though the market is overvalued. So it's going to be difficult for them. So we need to look for other opportunities for income, whether it's looking to annuity type products that are tied to the market or whatever, at least for a portion of those dollars, to try to give us something that's fixed. Obviously, we look at Social Security as kind of your base. And then from there, then we have to try to figure this is why a plan is so important, is to determine, well, how much money do you really need a month to maintain your standard of living? And that's hard for people that are working to really see how much money am I going to really need for retirement. So we try to break it down into segments. First thing I focus on with the people, if this is their concern, is to work on determining how are we going to get this income that will last? What is available in the marketplace that will give me that opportunity that's guaranteed? I think a lot of people are under the misconception that I can buy large cap stocks that are dividend paying, and that the dividends will be sufficient enough. But dividends are not guaranteed. So you are kind of into that situation. I had a good friend of mine who had a lot of money in the financial side of things in banks, and lost not only a significant portion of his portfolio, but lost income because the companies stopped paying dividends. Once they get hurt enough in profitability, they can't pay those dividends. So they need things that are truly guaranteed, so that they know when I hit 65 and I'm ready to retire, this is how much this asset will give me an income for life. Once they've satisfied that, then we can look at doing some other things. But I find that that's been the focus of my business over the last 10 to 15 years, is the income. It's something that I can take and guarantee, and I can count on every month coming to my bank account, just like I would my Social Security check, or if I have a pension, your pension check. Healthcare is a big problem today for current retirees. I assume that with the inflation of medical costs that we're seeing, that will also become a large problem for many of the people of the boomer generation that will soon be retiring, and that will be your medical care. You know, what do we do about that? What's it going to look like? As part of the planning process, these are things I ask the people. What is your plan for health care? Can you continue on through your employer's plan? Are you looking at Medicare plus a supplement? You know, how are you looking at solving those problems? If you end up at some point needing long-term care, you know, we have people out here with Alzheimer's and different things that actually ends up taking a great amount of your portfolio, your savings, away from your spouse. And it's difficult to get Medicaid, Medicare at this, or Medicaid, I should say, at that point, to try to take care of things without spending down all of your assets, which could devastate your spouse. So these are part of the things that we talk about as part of the planning process, and then what is available out there that we can utilize of stuff that you already have in your portfolio, or against products that are out in the marketplace that we can help trade those off. Many people, to go out and buy long-term care is very expensive for them, and they're paying premiums that are not guaranteed. They get more higher as they get older, and right when they need it, they can't afford it. So we try to find other things in the marketplace that will not be true long-term care products, but have benefits much like that, much like long-term. The three main issues that you need to be concerned about with your 401k is diversification. Do not assume that just because you're allocated in one thing that those same stocks are not in some of the other allocations that you have picked. Number two, as soon as you turn 59 and a half, most plans allow you to move your money outside of the 401k plan, even though you're still working. That will allow you to have more choices as far as what your money is invested in. And the third thing would be to be very cautious risk-wise from a perspective of losses, that you will never be able to recoup the costs. If you're within 3 to 5 years of retirement, you will never recoup those dollars, or not likely to recoup those dollars before it's time for you to retire. Any losses that you have in the first 5 years prior to retirement or the first 5 years in retirement, in most cases will give you an 80% chance that you will run out of money before you pass away. We seem to have a lot of people that help us build or grow our portfolios or retirement income. But one of the areas that we probably have the biggest problem with is distribution. So I'm going to talk about 5 specific topics as far as distribution. Number one is you need a budget. This becomes also part of the planning process when we sit down with a new client, but a budget is important. Our budget is going to change from the time that we accumulate money, or while we're accumulating money, to when we're living off of Social Security and the other money that we have accumulated. And we also then at the same time need to come up with an income goal. Where do you want to be? How are we going to get there? So the budget becomes a big factor before, but especially after we start tapping into those retirement funds. Number two are assets. When we sit down, we want to look at what do we actually have that are assets. You know, we can have our home, we may have vehicles, we may have little hot rod cars that we've accumulated over the years, motorcycles, motor homes, second homes. Anything that basically is an asset, we want to be able to look at those things and see how those will best fit our needs when we get into retirement. For those that own a home, maybe it'll be doing a reverse mortgage or whatever the case might be. Obviously, there's a lot of press, good and bad, when it comes to those, but for some people, it ends up being a great source of income for them in retirement. We want to know, where are your bank accounts? Do you have other IRAs? Do you have brokerage accounts? All those things basically need to be all put together and taken into consideration when we're looking at where we're going to distribute funds first. That will take us to the third area, which is taxes. Everyone, or I should say most people, realize that with your IRAs and your 401k dollars that will end up becoming IRAs, that at age 70 and a half, you begin to do what is called required minimum distribution. This is where the IRS wants you now to start paying taxes on those dollars that you deferred for all those years while you were working. I remember several years ago doing a seminar when I was talking to some people that were starting to retire, getting things in line to retire, and then we started talking about this and they got rather heated because they were realizing that they may have to take some income out of those 401k plans that they had not counted on, and then in that same situation having to take taxes. So part of this distribution process, we also want to look at taxes will play a big part in the distribution of these assets. It will also affect, these other assets we have will also affect the taxes that you may have to pay on Social Security. Remember, when Social Security was started, it was supposed to be tax-free. Back in the 90s, that was changed to where you could end up paying taxes depending upon a certain income threshold on 50% of your assets or your Social Security income. And at another level, you would pay up to 85% of your dollars that you receive from Social Security would be taxable as income in that year. Those things change every year. They're not as high as what some of you may think. Some of these thresholds are down as low as $40,000, $30,000, $35,000, depending upon your particular situation. Are you married, single? And so these are just things to consider. Where are we when we turn assets into income? What assets should we take first? Should we take our IRAs first? Should we take tax deferred instruments first? All these things will need to be looked at, or should be looked at, between yourself, your financial advisor, and your accountant, whoever's helping you with your tax returns. So it is a little more involved than what most people would think about. The fourth topic is Medicare. A lot of people are under the impression that Medicare basically will take care of all their medical needs. It's just not true. With Medicare, there's different choices of things that you can go into. You can use Medicare Advantage, which gives you some other little goodies when it comes to office calls and things. But Medicare as a whole basically leaves you a situation where you have a deductible for office calls, and then you are responsible for 20% of your entire bill. If you have something, a devastating illness, you could end up with something that could literally bankrupt your retirement. So it's an important topic to discuss with people or with advisors to see what is going to work best in helping you cover those. Do you need a supplement? Do you have assets that you can set aside that will buy some additional coverage? But that will be an issue that you'll need to discuss with other family members. All of us have probably had a family member or so that has ended up in this situation where they've had Alzheimer's or a debilitating disease where they are bedridden or put into an institution, and that has a tendency to basically bankrupt the surviving spouse. And we move on then to number 5, which would be long-term care, which would come into the same area. Medicare does not pay for long-term care. Periodically, I will run into people that have Medicare. If they've got the older contracts that allowed for them to have a locked-in premium, they probably are very happy that they had bought that product when they did. Today, most of the product out there is what they call guaranteed renewable. So it's renewable, but the rates are going up every year. As we have more and more older people go into these facilities, the rates and the cost becomes higher. And what likely we see is people, by the time they really need it, they can't afford the premiums any longer. So that is an area where some planning is needed to make sure that we've either set up assets in a trust or different places where we make sure that we're taking care of whichever spouse is surviving, to then allow the state or whatever to help us take care of the person that's in the facility. All right, just to leave you with a couple thoughts. When we're talking about a budget, make it realistic. Come up with some finite numbers that make sense, that you feel are attainable. Taxes become an important part of all your planning. So in distribution of these dollars, that's going to be an important part or things for you to look at. Medical care you're going to find in retirement is going to be one of the more important or higher costs of items that you pay for during retirement. It is a must to take and do a review as far as these things are concerned. Look at these things with an open mind, with the idea that it is not impossible to come up with a way to help you with those costs with the current programs or current assets that you may already have. I'm Ray McFoling. Reach out to me today and I will answer your call personally.